Hello and welcome to MAGA, the podcast. Our mission is to show how Don the Con bamboozled our nation. Our goal is to help make sure the cult of MAGA goes down in flames by 2028, to stop it before MAGA becomes unstoppable and our democracy further decays into a dictatorship. If we want the cult of MAGA to end, we have to know how it began and why it's bred. Now, this is not your racist uncle's MAGA. Our MAGA stands for I'm an angry asshole, the cult of Donald Trump. And I'm your host, the disgusted American. So in our last episode, we explored how, unlike past presidents, Trump has directly used the office of the presidency to line the pockets of his businesses. This idea of him operating like Don the Don or a gangster, and a gangster is crime plus power. We took a look at a form of pay for play, a riff off the old payola scam from the radio days. In Trump's version, people who wanted access to the president and his staff had to spend a lot of money at Trump's properties. This is a huge conflict of interest and should not be allowed. But Trump's done it from the very beginning of his first term. And this time around, he's gotten even worse as he's discovered nobody is going to do anything to stop him. Congress right now licks his boots, and the Supreme Court keeps giving him more and more power. This week, we're going to take a look at another Don the Don gangster racket, the offer you can't refuse. So for those of you who are not familiar, an offer you can't refuse is a line from The Godfather Part 1.
Well, in a month from now, this Hollywood big shot's gonna give you what you want.
It's too late. They start shooting in a week.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
This line basically means that Don Vito Corleone is going to use his power and influence to ensure a desired outcome. Now again, Vito Corleone is a gangster, so crime plus power. He has an unspoken threat of dire consequences if his offer is not accepted. Vito's ability to exploit weaknesses and enforce his will through extreme measures is what makes him a gangster. This choice is not really a choice. The core of the phrase, an offer you can't refuse, is that there's no offer that's really on the table. It's a demand presented in a way that makes refusal unthinkable. This is the gangster way.
Records shared by the House Oversight Committee showed Trump hotels and properties charged Secret Service agents 5 times the normal government rate for accommodations while protecting him. Expenses covered by the taxpayer. Committee member Jerry Connolly.
Here's a man who boasts of how wealthy he is, and yet he is nickeling and diming the Secret Service, providing protection to the first family for everything they're worth. And I just think it ought to bother everybody.
In one case, the Secret Service was charged more than $1,100 for a room at the Trump International Hotel in D.C. for agents who were protecting Trump's son, Eric, well above the allowable $242 government rate. Committee documents also cited agent visits to Trump's Bedminster Golf Club and Mar-a-Lago and pointed to a public statement by Eric Trump in 2019 where he said the Secret Service stays at Trump's properties for free. But over 4 years, according to the committee, including for several months after Trump left office, the Secret Service made 669 payments to the Trump Organization, totaling more than $1.4 million.
This wasn't, one thing that happened because of extraordinary circumstances. It was routine that Donald Trump and his companies would gouge the American taxpayers.
A report that House Democrats have been working on for some time, but it really only looks at a narrow window in the Trump presidency, about 11 months, and it only specifically looks at the Trump Hotel in downtown D.C. It also showed examples of how folks that were looking for patronage or appointments from the Trump administration were routinely staying at the Trump Hotel during this period of time, including people looking for government jobs, looking for judicial appointments, ambassadorships, and even presidential pardons. Now, Democrats argue that this is Trump violating what's called the Emoluments Clause of the United States Constitution, which specifically prohibits presidents from their personal business interests being benefited while they are serving in office. And they say it's an indication that he's in violation of the Constitution. But out of the problem with that is while the Constitution very specifically says that this kind of conduct is not allowed, it doesn't provide any sort of a remedy or even a penalty if a president were to violate it. And in fact, the former president has been sued in court multiple times over the Emoluments Clause. clause, and the courts have rejected those claims simply because there is no penalty related to this. So the report doesn't even specifically say that something should be done to Donald Trump. Instead, it says that Congress needs to pass stricter laws that clearly state that presidents and their families are not allowed to benefit from the Oval Office.
Now, this racket to gouge the Secret Service is staggering when you consider the scope of the scam, because Trump constantly makes promotional appearances at his own businesses that he continues to own and profit from. According to the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, they cited in a letter that Trump visited his properties 547 times during his first term, including 145 trips to Mar-a-Lago. And did things get any better during Trump's second term? No.
Today on Forbes, Trump has spent about 1/3 of his presidency visiting his own properties. He went to one of his clubs 16 of his first 17 weekends, and he has now spent time at his businesses on 75 of his first 190 days back in office, according to a Forbes analysis, traveling to Florida, New Jersey, Virginia, Nevada, and of course, Scotland. Trump has long had a domineering attitude toward Europe, so it was little surprise when, on his recent trip there, he encouraged other leaders to come to him, specifically to his golf resort at Trump Turnberry. They obliged with a visit from European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who met with the president in a ballroom he named after himself. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer arrived the next day, prompting Trump to gush over windows in the facility.
First of all, why the hell is Trump spending so much time in other places? He's given a mansion, the White House, to conduct government business, but he continues to go to Mar-a-Lago. Why? Because when he's not in the White House, he can charge these exorbitant prices for people that are forced to protect him. Gangster's got a gangster. He even charges family members on the taxpayer dime. When Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner were both advising him during his first term and they stayed in one of his properties, they were charged for that on our dime, right? His own daughter and son-in-law. Now, the chief of the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington stated, and I quote, "It would be bad enough that he visited his properties nearly 550 times while in office, but it is much worse that he was using the trips to line his pockets with taxpayer money via his Secret Service protection," end quote. So again, it's not just that he spends nearly a quarter of the days of his presidency at a golf course, he should be fucking working. It's that he almost exclusively did so at courses that bear his name. And every time he does this, the Secret Service gets price gouged. American taxpayers foot the bill, and Trump gets paid. You might be saying, well, there's a coincidence and all these people would have been there anyway, but that's not true. Because when Trump sold the hotel in D.C. in 2022 to a Florida-based investment group that reopened as a Waldorf Astoria in June of 2023, spending by Republican groups at the location cratered. So this was what it always appeared to be, a pure pay-for-play scam for people that wanted access to the president and then price gouging for the Secret Service agents that were there to protect him. Committee Democrats argued, former President Trump's D.C. hotel stays as the ultimate government ATM withdrawal opportunity. Think about it. Trump can pull this crap whenever he wants. He created a money machine that we all have to pay for. So for those of us familiar with The Godfather, we know that an offer you can't refuse is not the entire quote. It's the first half of the statement. Here's the second half.
My father made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Luca Brasi held a gun to his head, and my father assured him that either his brains or his signature would be on the contract.
So what's Trump's version of your brain or your signature on the contract? Well, a couple weeks ago, Trump announced a profit-sharing agreement with NVIDIA and AMD, where they had to exchange a part of their profits for permission to export high-end chips to China.
Joining us now is former Republican governor of Ohio, John Kasich. Republicans are supposed to be this party of small government, but then Trump goes and makes deals with Intel and chip manufacturer NVIDIA for the government to get a portion of their profits.
The fact is, I don't agree that the government should be acquiring these stakes in these companies. I created an economic development operation when I was governor of Ohio, and it was an independent operation that helped to recruit businesses. But one of the things that I specifically said we would not do was to take a stake in companies or to invest in companies, because it usually doesn't work out. It doesn't work out if it's a Republican president, Democrat president, a Republican governor, or a Democrat governor. It doesn't work out because government is not there to pick winners and losers. I think he just has instincts and he just moves on them. And, it appears as though he doesn't spend a lot of time listening to other folks. But, look, I had some Republicans, conservatives the other day say to me, what do you think about Trump making an investment here in Intel? And I looked at him and I said, well, before I answer you, let me ask you a question. What would you think if it was Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton that was trying to take a stake? And I just turned around and walked out because I didn't have to wait for the answer.
The president suggested, and the CEOs of these companies agreed, on 15% from their sales being turned over to the government. Now, historically, the U.S. government made decisions to control the export of sensitive technology based on national security grounds. And these decisions were viewed as non-negotiable. If a technology was controlled, companies cannot buy their way around these controls, no matter how lucrative these foreign sales may have been.
President Trump stunned many in the tech world after announcing a controversial deal with chip makers NVIDIA and Advanced Micro Devices. Now there are questions about the legality of this deal, its implications for national security and beyond. For more on this, I'm joined by Scott Kennedy, Senior Advisor in Chinese Business and Economics at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Is there precedent for it, and is it legal?
I have never heard of a deal like this as long as I've been watching U.S. Government business relations or the tech industry. The U.S. government taking a cut of exports. I think it's pretty unprecedented. It has huge implications for the semiconductor industry.
And is it clear that it's a legal deal? Is the legality issue still at play here?
Well, if you read the Constitution and look at Article 1, Section 9, you will see that the U.S. is not supposed to impose export taxes on American companies.
We should note it's a huge departure from previous policy that was restricting China's access to these advanced semiconductors, largely due to national security concerns that they could be used for military technology. But President Trump has said that this deal is limited to NVIDIA's older H20 chips and a similar AMD chip. Take a listen to how he justifies it.
This is an old chip that China already has. And I deal with Jensen, who is a great guy, and NVIDIA. The chip that we're talking about, the H20, it's an old chip. China already has it in a different form, different name, but they have it. Or they have a combination of two will make up for it and even then some.
So, Scott, does the president's explanation there address any national security concerns you or others might have?
The Trump administration originally looked at this, which is in April, when the Commerce Department put controls on this chip and said that it shouldn't be exported. And we've not heard anything from the Commerce Department yet saying that their evaluation of the national security risks for this chip. These still are really quite advanced chips, and they potentially could go towards purposes that help the Chinese military. China is a place where it is very difficult to make sure when you export a technology, it doesn't get diverted for purposes for which it wasn't originally approved. So I think there are some real risks here, despite what the president has said.
There's a bigger concern about whether this sets up a sort of pay-to-play trade policy, sets precedent for other firms who have restricted exports to China. Do you share that concern?
Yes, I'm worried.
But on August 13th, Trump threw all that out the window. He upended decades of U.S. national security policy to create an entirely new category of corporate risk. What's even more egregious about all this is that months earlier, his own administration banned the sale of these chips, citing national security concerns. And nothing's changed between April and now, except receiving a cut of the profits. This move drew condemnation from U.S. lawmakers in both parties. U.S. Representative John Molinar, a Republican from Michigan who serves on the House Select Committee on China, said, and I quote, "Export controls are a frontline defense in protecting our national security. We should not set a precedent that incentivizes the government to grant licenses to sell China technology that will enhance its AI capabilities, end quote. The ranking Democrat in the same committee said that by putting a price on our security concerns, we signal to China and our allies that American national security principles are negotiable for the right fee. And this is our horrendous precedent. These firms are going to be paying an export tax, even though either they or the administration won't describe it that way. Why not? Because export taxes are unconstitutional. Trump and his cronies are trying to get around this by implying the payments are voluntary. But if the firms can't get these export licenses without agreeing to the payments, it's an offer you can't refuse. It's not really optional. Your brains or your signature will be on this contract. If you want to play, you have to pay. I mean, just listen to how Don the Don talked about this deal.
It's a new tax of sorts on American companies who want to get export licenses from the U.S. government. We had a fascinating discussion live in the briefing room by the president. He explained how he came to this deal. He said he was meeting with Jensen Huang here at the White House, and Huang wanted the permission from the federal government to sell these chips in China. The president said he asked him for 20% of the revenue, said, if I'm going to do this for you, I need 20%, a strictly, transactional approach to sort of what the federal regulations are here. He said Wang came back to him and said, well, can we make that 15%? And they were willing to cut a deal on that. And so that does raise the questions. If the U.S. government is doing a deal that benefits a company, does that company have to kick back a certain percentage?
So again, he's talking like a gangster. I will give this to you if you give me a cutback, right? Again, there's a term for this that the gangsters have. It's called wetting my beak. And here's where it's from, Godfather Part 2.
I saw the last padre con amici miei, prima a parlare con
Amici tuoi, chi non può più sei? Tanto per bagnare la bocca,
Now, for those of you that speak Italian, then that, was easy to translate. But for those of you that don't, Don Fanucci, Gangster 1, is talking to Don Vito Corleone, Gangster 2. And Fanucci's demanding a cut of the profits that Vito and his crew got from hijacking trucks and selling the goods. Corleone says he has to talk to his associates before offering a cut. And Fanucci replies, he doesn't want a lot, just enough to wet his beak. Right? This is how gangsters talk. This is how they do business. So there's so many ways that this precedent with NVIDIA and AMD is such a bad idea. Again, we have a situation where policy decisions can be made that benefit particular partners to the detriment of competitors. And it could influence business decisions with this cut that's been given to the government. Finally, levies like this create a serious corruption problem. Already worse than what Trump is, which is a straight gangster. But this gives even more incentives for people to cheat, lie, and steal. If the government can pick and choose what products and what producers are subject to an export tax, there's nothing to prevent a firm from using political influence to gain an exception that's unavailable to their competitors. It fails to protect U.S. security interests. In fact, Kyle Hanley, a professor at the University of California, San Diego School of Global Policy and Strategy, described it like this. He said, and I quote, "It sure looks like an export tax to me. They can call it whatever they want. It really looks a lot like the government is skimming a little bit off the top," end quote. You know who else likes to skim off the top? You guessed it, gangsters. In fact, here's a scene from Casino of them talking about it.
No matter what the problems were outside the count room, it was all worth it. The cash kept rolling in, and the suitcases kept coming and going. And let me tell you, the fucking bottom line here is cash. The only problem was that after a while, the bosses noticed that the suitcases were getting a little light.
Wait a minute. You mean to tell me that the money we're robbing is being robbed? That somebody's robbing from us? You're into all this fucking trouble, and somebody's robbing us?
Like I said, it's part of the business. It's considered leakage. Leakage my balls. I want the guy who's robbing us.
You gotta know that a guy who helps you steal, even if you take care of him real well, he's gonna steal a little bit extra for himself. Makes sense, don't it? Right?
What's the point of skimming if we're being skimmed? defeats the whole purpose of what we're doing out there.
Now, Trump's making no secrets about his desire to greatly expand the government's ability and his personal authority to manage foreign investment, decisions normally made by companies themselves. Above and beyond NVIDIA and AMD, he's also compelling the U.S. to acquire a stake in another chip maker, Intel. And Trump says he wants to personally control a share of foreign investment in the United States. In July, he made this deal with Japan.
Japan will now pay a 15% tariff versus the reciprocal rate of 24% that they initially had. Auto and auto parts tariffs have been reduced to 15%. But the centerpiece of this deal now is the president got Japan to commit to $550 billion in investments to revitalize American industries. And these funds will be spent at President Trump's discretion and direction.
He also made a similar deal with South Korea where they pledged to invest $350 billion. Again, under his discretion. Both pledges came in exchange for lower tariffs. The big question for me is, why does Trump get to control this money and where it's invested? He likes to play a great businessman on TV, but a lot of his business decisions have been absolute disasters. Here are a couple of his greatest mistakes.
I'm really a good businessman. I'm so good at business. Oh, not true. Trump is a business failure. Almost every business he's touched, he's driven into the ground.
When it comes to great steaks, I've just raised the stakes. Trump steaks are the world's greatest steaks, and the Sharper Image is the only store where you can buy them.
According to Sharper Image's then CEO, they literally sold almost no steaks.
Trump had a failed board game.
My new game is Trump, the game. Trump, the game, because it's not whether you win or lose, it's whether you win.
A failed bicycle race called Tour de Trump. A failed football team.
It's going to stay strong. It's going to stay strong for a long time.
Trump decided it was a good idea to start a mortgage company in 2006. It's a great time to start a mortgage company. That failed in less than 2 years. Let's see, what else was there?
Whatever happened to Trump Airlines?
Oh, that was a good one. One of his planes had a crash landing within the first 2 months, which he insisted was the most beautiful landing you've ever seen. The business failed within 3 years.
How about Trump University?
Failed.
And then there's Trump Magazine.
Failed.
Trump Vodka.
Failed.
Trump Travel, Trump Ice, Trump Network.
Failed, failed, failure. Trump has even managed to bankrupt multiple casinos. How do you lose money running a casino? There's no joke that the easiest way to make a small fortune is to start with a large one. And that's exactly what Trump did. Multiple analyses show that if Trump had simply invested his multi-million-dollar inheritance in an index fund and didn't touch it, he'd be a lot richer than he is now. Now think about that. His entire life's work has been less successful than if he'd done nothing. And when he was president, Trump ran the country like he ran his failed businesses. He added $8.4 trillion to the national debt, largely through his tax cuts for the rich and big corporations. Trump has managed to survive every one of his business failures by leaving other people on the hook, leaving workers unpaid, shafting his investors. The whole idea that Trump is good at business was a carefully crafted illusion, concocted for a reality TV show. And like a lot of reality TV shows, we've come to learn it was all show and no reality. The only business Trump has been successful at is conning people. Now he's trying to do it again. Don't fall for it.
In this episode, we talked about how Trump makes offers people can't refuse, using influence and muscle to force people to do what you want. It's immoral and it's illegal, but Trump's a criminal, so he's not fazed by such petty things. He doesn't mind using the Secret Service like an ATM. People looking to curry favor, whether it's a pardon, a judgeship, or just a job, agree to pay for a play, to stay at his locations in order to get access to him. The second part of that, brains or signatures being on a contract, is used for certain companies to get sweetheart deals. The NVIDIA deal allows them to sell a chip to China that months ago was banned from being sold because it was a security risk. And nothing changed except a cut of the profits. Export taxes are supposed to be illegal, but Trump doesn't let silly little details like legality influence his decisions, and everyone else pays the price. Companies that won't or don't want to cut the government into their profits, and whoever's willing to pay to play. The hell with national security being a deciding factor. At the end of the day, Donald Trump behaves like a gangster. He uses the presidency the way a Don uses a crime family, to shake people down and make them offers they can't refuse. So that's all we've got for this week. If you want to help out the channel, please subscribe or follow us on your preferred podcasting platform, and tell your fellow disgusted Americans where they can find us to give us a listen. If you have a few moments, please leave us a rating on your preferred podcasting platform so more folks can find the show. These ratings make a difference, so please take a moment if you support us. New episodes drop on Wednesdays, sometimes Thursdays. Appreciate you tuning in. Have a great night. Ciao. Bye for now.